It wasn't the kind of morning that made anyone feel lucky. Gray clouds sat low over the rust-covered rooftops of Shantipur Junction, and the air smelled like wet iron, smoke, and spilled diesel. Trains screeched in, belched steam, and pulled out again like they had somewhere better to be. Everyone did, except for one barefoot boy weaving through the legs of irritated travelers, shouting the same line with a cracked, hopeful voice, "Chai! Garam chai!" 13-year-old Ravi had been selling tea here since he was 8. His tray, metal and bent at the corners, held 6 chipped cups, all clinking with every step. The tea was scalding, the sugar always too much, and the customers often too rude. But it was a living. Barely. Every morning at 4:30, Ravi woke in the small one-room shack he shared with his mother. He boiled milk, crushed cardamom pods with the back of a spoon, and carried the fresh batch of chai in a dented aluminum kettle to Platform 2 before the first train from Guwahati arrived. Most passengers ignored him. Some shouted. A few flung coins like they were feeding pigeons. But once in a while, someone smiled. That was enough. He wasn't in school, not anymore. He used to go, a free government school down the road. But when his father got sick and the medical bills piled up like broken promises, Ravi stepped in. His teachers said he was sharp. His mother said he was brave. But Ravi just felt tired. And yet there was something in him, something stubborn. Every night, when the station emptied out and the platforms quieted, he sat on the far bench with a crumpled math book he'd kept from class. He'd solve problems in the dim yellow glow of the platform lights, mouthing the steps under his breath like prayers. He didn't know why he did it. He just couldn't stop. Maybe, deep down, he believed there was more to life than pouring tea for strangers who wouldn't remember his face. Maybe he wasn't ready to give up yet. One day, while the station buzzed with usual chaos, a tall man in a dark blue blazer stepped off the 1020 Express. Everyone gave him space, like he wasn't from around here. He wore glasses, shiny shoes, and walked like someone who had never missed a train in his life. He looked down at Ravi's tea tray and asked, "Is it hot?" Ravi nodded. "Very, sir. Just made." The man took a cup, sipped, paused, and smiled. "You make this yourself?" "Yes, sir," Ravi said, standing straighter. "Good balance. You'll go far." It was such a simple thing, just a sentence. But when someone speaks to you like you matter, you remember it for the rest of your life. Ravi watched as the man disappeared into the crowd, briefcase swinging. He never got his name, but that moment felt like a spark in the dark. A few weeks later, Ravi came across a torn newspaper shoved under a bench. On it was an ad. Free government scheme for skilled training for youth under 18. He didn't tell his mother. Not yet. He showed up the next week at the local center, barefoot and nervous, holding the newspaper like a ticket to another world. The clerk looked him up and down. "You think you'll get in like this?" "I can learn," Ravi said quietly. "Please." The man sighed. "There's a hospitality course, 1 seat left." Ravi grabbed it like a drowning man clutches driftwood. Every day for the next 6 months, Ravi worked double shifts. Morning tea runs at the station, evening classes at the center. He memorized hotel etiquette, learned how to fold napkins like swans, and served mock customers with poise he didn't know he had. By the time he turned 15, he had a certificate in one hand and a suitcase in the other. A 5-star hotel in Delhi needed interns. Ravi left Shantipur with nothing but his tray, his memories, and the echo of train horns in his bones. He didn't look back. Not yet. The first thing Ravi noticed about Delhi wasn't the size. It was the silence inside the hotel. The Oriana Grand wasn't just a building. It was a world of polished marble floors that echoed every footstep, ceilings high enough to make you dizzy, and air that smelled faintly of jasmine, leather, and power. Ravi stood in the staff hallway clutching his name tag, Ravi Das, intern. It felt like a joke pinned to his chest. The only other thing he had brought with him was a neatly folded white shirt and the battered math book from the station bench. The lobby manager, a woman in a tight black suit who never smiled, looked him over. "You speak English?" "Yes, ma'am, little." "Smile when you greet. Never say what. And for God's sake, polish your shoes." "Yes, ma'am." He was assigned to lobby service. That meant standing by the elevator, greeting guests, offering cold towels, and carrying bags that weighed more than he did. The rich didn't look at him the way train passengers did. They didn't look at him at all. For the first few weeks, Ravi barely spoke. He watched, observed, learned how the bell captain folded his hands when speaking to VIPs, how the concierge handled complaints with calm, rehearsed charm, how every movement had a purpose, precise, clean, professional. Ravi memorized them all, but he didn't just want to be good. He wanted to be excellent. Every break, he'd sneak into the staff library, reading old hospitality magazines, business books, and sometimes hotel blueprints. "Why are you reading this?" the chef once asked, spotting him hunched over a floor plan. "I want to understand how everything works," Ravi said. The chef just grunted. "You're strange. I like it." One day, a crisis hit. The general manager was out sick. The assistant manager was stuck in traffic. A high-profile delegation from Dubai was arriving early, and no one had informed housekeeping or reception. The lobby descended into chaos. Staff panicked. Front desk fumbled. A bellboy nearly knocked over a chandelier. But Ravi? He stepped forward. He took the list of guest names from the receptionist and began matching their preferences from past visits. He called housekeeping via intercom and calmly said, "Prioritize suites 501 to 506. Mr. Karam likes sandalwood freshener. Ms. Layla prefers green tea on arrival." Everyone stared. He wasn't guessing, he had been observing it all for months, quietly, silently, absorbing details like a sponge. By the time the delegation arrived, everything was ready. Perfect. The assistant manager arrived breathless, just in time to find Ravi personally guiding the lead guest to his room. That evening, the hotel director asked to see him. "You've got a brain, boy," the man said. "You ever think of studying business?" Ravi nodded slowly. "I can't afford college, sir." The man leaned back in his leather chair, watching him carefully, then picked up the phone. "Tell HR we're giving Ravi Das a scholarship to our hospitality training program in Singapore, full ride, starting next month." Ravi didn't know what to say. He thought of the tea tray, the station, his mother's tired hands. His voice cracked. "Thank you, sir." The man only smiled. "Don't thank me. You earned it." Singapore felt like stepping onto a different planet. Digital classrooms, international students, professors who spoke 5 languages. Ravi had never seen so many suits in one place. He struggled at first. His English was choppy, and his accent made others raise their eyebrows. But he didn't care. He stayed late, took notes twice, asked questions others were too proud to ask. 3 years later, he graduated top of his class. Hotels began calling him, New York, Dubai, London. But Ravi didn't take any of them. He booked a one-way ticket back to India, to Shantipur, to the station where it all began. He hadn't seen it in 8 years. As his cab pulled up, the station looked exactly the same, and entirely different. Smaller now, rustier. But the memories came back instantly. The shouting porters, the coal smoke, and one chai boy running through the crowd, tray bouncing with each step. Except this time, that boy wasn't him. He stepped out of the cab, suitcase in hand, wearing a clean white shirt with cufflinks. Ravi walked toward platform 2 slowly, almost reverently. And just as the train from Guwahati screamed into the station, he paused near the bench, his bench, and smiled. He was home. But this wasn't the end, not yet. He had one more thing to do. It had been a month since Ravi returned to Shantipur, but he didn't go back to platform 2, not as a chai seller. He rented a room in a small guest house near the station and spent his days observing, walking through each platform, watching the flow of people, the chaos, the inefficiency, the broken PA system, the leaking roofs, the same tea vendors shouting over the noise, trays clinking in rhythm with the past. And then he did something bold. He requested a meeting with the Railway Development Board. It took weeks of calls, emails, and sheer persistence. When they finally agreed, he walked into their Delhi office with a briefcase full of blueprints, proposals, and a vision so clear it felt inevitable. The boardroom was filled with skeptical faces, mostly older men in starched shirts, some with thick glasses and thicker egos. "You're, 25? One of them asked. "Yes, sir," Ravi said calmly. "And you're proposing we hand over station management to you? What makes you qualified?" Ravi clicked the remote in his hand, and the projector lit up with the first slide, a before and after layout of Shantipur Junction, one labeled now, the other in 5 years. He spoke for 20 minutes, detailing his proposal: a station with automated ticketing kiosks, solar-powered lighting, organized vendor stalls with sanitation and licenses, a digital scheduling board, and a revenue model that actually turned a profit. When he finished, the room was quiet. Then a man at the far end cleared his throat. "You worked for Oriana Grant?" "Yes, sir." "And studied in Singapore?" "Yes." The man nodded slowly. "Why here?" "Why Shantipur?" Ravi paused, then smiled. "Because I sold tea on that platform for 10 years. I didn't read about the problems in a report, I lived them." That silence? It meant they were listening now. "I'm not asking for charity," he added. "I'm offering a private-public partnership model. I invest, I manage, you retain oversight." "And if you fail?" another asked. "I won't," Ravi said. "But if I do, I'll walk away. No loss to you." They deliberated for a week. He got the call on a Thursday morning. Approved. Ravi stood at the edge of Platform 1 a year later. The station looked reborn. Clean platforms, painted walls, new LED lighting, a proper seating area under a shaded roof. Digital screens announced train arrivals, and the chai vendors, now licensed, uniformed, and standing behind neatly labeled stalls, with proper sanitation, real pricing, no bribed inspectors, no backhanded threats. He created systems, hired locals, gave contracts to small suppliers. He even started a small fund to send the children of tea sellers to school. Books, uniforms, meals, and once the place ran itself, he bought the station rights in full. Shantipur Junction was his now, legally, operationally, permanently. A local journalist came by one day to interview him. "You're the youngest private station manager in the country," she said. "Why not move to the city again? You could be making millions." Ravi just chuckled, sipping a steaming cup of tea in a chipped cup he'd kept all these years. "Because this is where it started," he said, "and sometimes fixing where you came from is more important than chasing somewhere else." She smiled. "Do you still drink chai every day?" "Of course," Ravi said. "It tastes better now." She laughed. "Last question. What happened to your old tray?" Ravi stood up and pointed to the wall behind his desk. There, framed in glass, was his first tea tray, bent corners, faded handles, still stained from the old kettle. Above it, a small plaque read, "To the boy who sold tea and bought back his future." It was just after dawn. A light fog clung to the edges of the platform like a memory refusing to let go. Trains still groaned into the station, vendors still shouted. But something about Shantipur had changed, and it wasn't just the clean platforms or the digital boards blinking neatly overhead. It was the pride in the eyes of people who had once stopped hoping. Ravi walked through the station like he always had, but this time with no tray, no bare feet, no fear of being shoved aside. He wore a simple kurta, clean and pressed, and stopped at every stall, every face. "Everything all right, Mohan Bhai?" "Yes, Ravi Saab, all smooth today. Milk supply came early." He checked with the janitorial crew, the vendor supervisor, the security officer. Everyone knew him, and more importantly, everyone respected him, not because he was rich, but because he remembered. He knew what it meant to go hungry by 11 a.m. because your chai didn't sell. He knew how the hot sun felt when there was no roof overhead. He remembered which spot on Platform 2 had the best shade because that's where he used to do his math problems. And he made sure no child had to repeat that story again. Behind the station, he'd built a small learning center, the Platform School. 30 children attended now, sons and daughters of tea vendors, cleaners, rickshaw drivers. They were taught English, math, computers, and above all, dignity. Once a week, Ravi sat with them, not to teach, just to talk. He'd walk in with a smile, sit cross-legged on the floor, and ask them what they wanted to become. One boy said, "engineer." Another said, "station master." One little girl raised her hand and proudly said, "I want to be like you." Ravi chuckled, eyes damp. "No, you'll be better than me, much better." One afternoon, while reviewing reports in his small office above the station control room, Ravi heard a knock on the glass door. It was her, a woman in a faded green sari, holding a plastic bag and wiping her hands nervously on the edge of her palu. "Ma?" Ravi stood instantly, shocked. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" She smiled gently. "I wanted to see the station, the one you used to dream about fixing, the one that fed us for years." He pulled a chair for her. She didn't sit. Instead, she walked up to the wall where the old tea tray hung behind the glass. She stared at it. "You used to carry that when you were 8, she whispered. "It was too heavy for you. I told your father it would bend your shoulders." Ravi stepped beside her. "It did." She looked at him. "But it never bent your will." Ravi swallowed hard. "I thought we were cursed," she said, "that we'd never rise, that we were born to struggle. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe we were born into struggle," he said, "but we don't have to stay there." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then she reached into her plastic bag. "I brought this," she said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a tiny silver spoon, worn, slightly crooked, and deeply familiar. "This was your father's measuring spoon. For sugar." Ravi held it with reverence. "You kept it all these years?" "I kept it for this moment," she said. He placed it beside the tray inside the glass case. Two relics from another life. Two symbols of what it took to build something out of nothing. That night, as Ravi sat on the roof of the station, watching the trains glide by under a sea of stars, he closed his eyes and thought. He wasn't done yet. Not even close. There were other stations, other children, other chai boys waiting for their chance, and he would make sure they got it. 5 years had passed since Ravi took over Shantipur Junction. The once forgotten station had become a case study in transformation. News outlets called it a miracle model. Government ministers paid surprise visits just to witness how a chai boy had outperformed multi-crore contracts with nothing but grit, empathy, and sharp planning. But Ravi had no interest in fame. He was building something bigger now, a movement. It started small, one application to the Ministry of Railways, a proposal to adopt another underperforming station in a neighboring district. Then another, and another. He called the project Udon Terminals, a social venture dedicated to turning forgotten rural junctions into thriving community hubs. The concept was simple. Rebuild the infrastructure, set up digital and sanitation systems, provide jobs to local families, and establish a learning center at each station for children of laborers, vendors, and cleaners. Within 3 years, Ravi's initiative had expanded to 11 stations across the country, and yet he still traveled with the same old brown leather bag, still wore the same understated white shirts, and still drank chais from steel cups with extra cardamom, just the way he used to make it. He refused every private offer to sell out. Corporations wanted to acquire Udon Terminals, scale it, franchise it. "No," Ravi told them, "this isn't a product. This is a promise." One day, at the National Railway Conference in Mumbai, Ravi was invited to speak. Delegates from across India, government officials, and international investors filled the auditorium. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. He stepped onto the stage and began, not with a PowerPoint, but with a story. "I was 8 years old when I sold tea at Shantipur Junction," he said. "No one saw me. I wasn't on any payroll. I didn't have shoes. But I had dreams." He paused. "Every station in this country has a child like that. Some sweeping floors, some refilling water, some just watching the world pass by." He looked out at the sea of faces. "I don't want to build better stations. I want to build better futures." When he finished, the room stood in silence, then applause, a standing ovation that echoed louder than any train horn he'd ever heard. Months later, Ravi returned to Shantipur for what had become his annual ritual, sitting alone on the far bench of Platform 2 as the 10:20 express rolled in, the same train from Guwahati, the same track where everything started. Only this time, someone else was shouting, "Chai! Garam chai!" He turned and saw a boy, barefoot, maybe 10, balancing a tray of cups, just like he once had. Ravi stood up and walked over. "How much for one?" "10 rupees, sir." Ravi handed him the money and accepted the cup. "What's your name?" "Arjun." The boy replied, "You go to school, Arjun?" The boy looked down. "Not anymore. My father passed. I help my mother." Ravi nodded slowly. "Come to this address tomorrow," he said, scribbling on a notepad and handing it over. "We'll arrange your classes. You'll still help your mother, but you'll also study." Arjun blinked. "Why would you help me?" Ravi smiled gently. "Because once someone helped me too." That night, as Ravi sat by his window overlooking the glowing station lights, he opened an envelope delivered earlier that day. Inside was a certificate. In recognition of extraordinary service to rural development and education, the government of India honors Ravi Das with the Padma Shri. He stared at the paper for a long time, then quietly folded it and tucked it behind the old math book he still kept on his shelf. Awards were fine, but the real reward was seeing a barefoot boy carry tea and knowing he wouldn't have to do it forever. Ravi leaned back, sipped his chai, and smiled. The station was no longer just a station. It was a symbol of resilience, of vision, of what can happen when someone decides not to accept the limits of where they were born. Because sometimes the boy who sells tea doesn't just beat the odds, he changes them.